Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel today. We're back on Gran Turismo 7 and we're back at Daytona in Group 3. But for this race, we are trying something a little bit different. We are not using the Supra. I am going into this race with the BMW Z4 that is massively down on power on the straight. But we are starting from P1 and we're going to try and get a win against the Supra in this daily race C. Can we do it? Let's find out as we go into this race. I'm obviously driving the Z4. We've got about 14 other Supras, maybe 13 other Supras in this race. I think there was a couple of other cars through the grid, but it was a majority race full of Supras, and we're going to try and hold on and take the win in this daily race C. So if you do enjoy these videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comment section if you've enjoyed this week's daily race C. So first things first, going into turn 1. Now we do have a little bit of an advantage through the first few corners on this combination because the Z4 is actually pretty strong on acceleration. So out of this corner it's got reasonable acceleration, and then out of the next right hand corner it's actually got decent acceleration. Now obviously the Supra does catch up a little bit on the further you go into the gears, but at this point we need to push and try and build up a gap and get away from that slipstream, which I have actually managed to do. You can see that gap is up at 1.7 seconds, and that is a perfect situation. So for me, that means that most of the cars in this race must be starting on them hard tyres. Well, a few of the cars must be starting on the hard tyres, at least the car behind us, because otherwise we would have been pulling away at this stage. We would not have been pulling away at this stage, but you can see we've got that gap up to 1.8 seconds, which is absolutely perfect for the start of this race in the Z4. And now we're going to push on to the area where the Z4 is at most risk. All about the power now. You've got the little chicane in between the two straights of power zones. I know this isn't a straight what we're on now, it's the banked corner, but it's completely flat out. And that Supra will gain massively on us during this phase of the track. So we're going to try and get through the chicane as quick as possible. You can see how much the car behind us is gaining on us massively there on the power section. And now we're into the chicane, and we're going to try and get through here as quick as we can and back onto the straight. And you can see we've got that gap up to 1.4, 1.7, 1.8. We're still pulling away because obviously we took more speed out the corner. However, we're going to have a little look. As we zoom in, you can see now the Supra is starting to catch up in 6th gear. Even though they got a worse exit than us, you can see that they're catching. And just look at that delta getting nearer and nearer and nearer. And now they're actually going to be into the slipstream. And that shows you just how much of a power advantage that Supra has over this Z4. It's going to be very difficult to keep this car ahead. You can see they've actually gained over a second on that power zone. That's crazy. And they got a worse exit from, I think Kev there got a worse exit from the chicane as well. So it's probably a gain in about 1.2 seconds if they get a good exit from the chicane. So it's going to be very, very difficult to hold on to this position. So now into the middle sector again. Again, we need to try and push for it. And it looks like that Kev has been overtaken and lost a few positions there, possibly to drivers maybe not on the hard tyres. It's a little bit hard to tell what tyres different people are on at this stage. Very, very difficult to try and figure it out as we go into this right hand corner, trying to get on the power nice and early and get that exit speed. You can see the gap going from 8 tenths up to about around about 8-9 tenths there as we're going into the braking zone. And now we're going to try and get on that power nice and early. You can see we get the gap up to 1 second there, but it does look like the car behind is getting better traction, which made me think possibly that car behind is currently on the medium tyres. Not 100% sure. We'll have to see what happens throughout the race, but you can see gap going down now. It's at 7 tenths, and that is going to get very, very short before we get to the end of this straight before the chicane. So into the braking zone, it's under half a second before the braking zone, and we're going to be at risk now. It's pretty clear that that car is going to be putting us under a lot of pressure on the straight because it gains over a second on this straight now. So yeah, he's going to pick up that slipstream and he's going to get past us. Now we need to play this quite sensible because I know that he's possibly not on the hard tyres because of the speed that he was getting on the traction zones. I know that the BMW Z4 is quite good on traction, and I noticed he was gaining quite a bit in some traction zones, but he has got a penalty, which is going to be a massive, massive help for me there because he would have been past then and pulling away. But now we're going to be holding on to P1 again for another few corners. And that is probably the perfect situation for us in this race. If we're going to try and get a win in this race, that is going to be the perfect situation. Penalties for other drivers, and we can maybe get lucky somewhere on track. Because on the straights, we don't have a chance. There's no way we can defend against a Supra. It just goes flying past us with zero defense against that car. But at the moment, we're still in P1. We're on hard tyres, so we're in a good position. Now we're going to skip ahead to the chicane before the back straight. You can see we've got Kev right up behind us there. So we're looking like we're going to get absolutely mugged. We've got 3 Supras behind us, and they're going to be all in slipstream. We've got no slipstream. This is going to be just watching them go straight past us. So you can see Kev's going to go to the right hand side there, and he's actually going to be able to, normally you wouldn't be able to overtake on the banked corner because you lose so much speed. However, that Supra is so quick that it just goes clean round the outside, and just look at this. We're going to lose 3 positions instantly, and just look at the overspeed that they have compared to the Z4. It's absolutely crazy how strong that car is in 6th gear. Does need a BOP. I think it needs at least 1% power taken off it. They need to do something just to get rid of that top end on the gearing. But we're going to work through here, and we see a little bit of chaos kicking off. Kev runs wide. We're going to go to the left hand side of the track and try and run around the outside. And as we go into braking zone, we get a little bit of a hit from the right hand side. I think Kev goes a bit deep, and then when he gets on the power, he loses control of the car, and he's spun off there. And I think he's actually took someone else out in the process. But we're now up into P3. So for me, this isn't running too bad. We're on the hard tyre. Not too sure on the tyres of the 2 cars in front of us. I believe they might have been on the medium tyre, purely because of the traction they were getting out some of the corners. But you can see we're going to get a run now. Do we go for a move up the inside? No, that's too risky, so we decide to back out. Just sit behind him here, use the slipstream. Now the Z4, like I said, doesn't have power on the straights. However, when you're in a slipstream, it can hang on. It's got pretty good gearing. So when you're within that half-second range to another car, the slipstream's actually quite strong with the Z4 because of the way the gearing is. So yeah, if this car had 1% more power, it'd be very competitive on the straights. I think it'd be able to compete a little bit more. But yeah, without that slipstream, it's completely dead. So hanging in there now. We're not going to try and overtake because there's no point, because we're not going to actually get past the Supra. All we can really do is use the slipstream all the way up to the pit stop, because we're going to go into the pits at the end of this lap and change over to the medium tyre. So going up to the high bit there where he's using the slipstream, we need to stay with that as long as we can to get as much advantage from that speed into the entry, because the faster you go in the pits, you will actually get a tiny bit faster pit stop as well. Now I noticed straight away they're not pitting, so this made me think possibly they're on the medium tyres. So this is looking okay for us now, because although they've got a massive pace advantage with that car, we're going into the pits and we're putting mediums on. So that should help us massively to stay with slipstream and actually be able to go for a move into some of the braking zones. So now we've got a nice bit of clean air. We come out the pits, we've got a 4-second gap in front of us. So now we can just push on for this outlap and try and get a solid lap in. So skipping ahead to the end of the outlap, and we see that the 2 drivers that were in front of us were on the medium tyres. You can see it there on the left. They were both on the medium tyre, so now they're going to have to put the hard tyre on, which is going to make this race very, very interesting, because it's going to actually mean we're going to have a chance of getting a win in this race. It's possible. We've just got to drive it quite smart and use the advantage we have with the extra grip in this middle sector. You can see we've come out right behind them, so we didn't actually gain much on that outlap in terms of the undercut with the tyres. But what we did do is we managed to stay in the slipstream. So now we've got that slipstream, we're on the better tyre, and we're going to be a little bit quicker through this section of track. So now, if we can get close enough in the braking zone, we might be able to actually go for a move. And one thing we've got to try and do is make sure we don't pick up any penalties, because a penalty will absolutely kill your race. So yeah, we don't want to get a penalty in this car. So we're going to have a little look up the inside here, and we're going to go for a move on the Supra straight away. Extra grip out of them medium tyres, and we make that move nicely up into P2. Well, technically P4 in the race, but it's actually P2 because 2 top drivers haven't pitted yet. But now we got the slipstream to P1. Now this is very, very important. If this guy goes for an overtake behind us, it's probably not much chance we can do to defend. But he actually goes for a bump draft to try and get us into the slipstream to P1. So that is a massive help for us. He's obviously trying to get us closer to the car in front so he can get the slipstream off that car as well. And it's a huge help for us, because if he went for a move there, we would have possibly lost the slipstream to P1, and that would have possibly been a race over, because I don't think the Z4 would have had the grunt to get anywhere near that car. But now we're a second behind, but that's enough to pick up a little bit of slipstream in 6th gear. And now we're going to try and hang on to that all the way down straight, as we see P1 off into the pits, P2 off into the pits, and now we're back into P2 in this race, and we're 1.2 seconds behind, nearly 1.3 seconds behind P1 there into the braking zone. And now we got the advantage of the medium tyre though, so through here we should be able to gain a little bit in some of these corners and in some of the traction zones. So coming out of the exit of this right hand corner, we should be able to gain a little tenth or so, but he makes quite a big mistake there, goes a little bit deep on the brakes. That's going to lose him a massive chunk. So he actually loses 3 tenths there, and then we get the advantage of the traction. So we're now into that slipstream. and hopefully we can get right up behind him and get the strong part of that slipstream, and we might be able to go for an overtake here. Let's see if we can go for a move anywhere at this point of the track. We're a bit too far behind here. We know we went for a move on this left-hand corner before, but yeah, we're not close enough this time. We're half a second behind. That's far too far behind for a lunge up the inside, but we're going to stay behind him, play this smart, and try and see if we can find a way past that Supra. So we're picking up the slipstream all the way on the bank part here. Now you can see the Z4 definitely has pretty good pace once you're in a slipstream. It's got reasonable straight line speed. It just needs that boost off the slipstream. And now one thing, Gran Turismo 7 has very, very strong slipstream within half a second of another car. And you can see we're actually going to go a little bit to the left just to try and put him off a little bit. Try and make him think we're going to go for a move, just to upset him really into the entry of the corner. And then as we come through, he goes a little bit deep. We're going to tuck up the inside there, and we're going to put ourselves into the lead of this race. Now, he's going to have the slipstream now on the straight, but this is a good position because we're in the lead. We've got the better tyre, so we should be able to get better traction. It's all about how much we can push through the middle sector, but you know, we've got that gap at 1 second now. Can we manage to break the slipstream and push away from this Supra that's behind us? This is going to be really interesting. If we can get a win in this Z4, it'll be an extremely good result at this week's Daily Race C, because as far as I've seen, I've not seen many people winning a race with the Z4. I think it's Jaguar's been an option that you could possibly get a win with if you can time the slipstream right, but Z4 just nowhere near as quick as the Jaguar or the Supra. So yeah, this will be a very, very good result from Daily Race C against the Supra. So again, through here you can see we're gaining on the corners, and that's what's great. We're getting out of the acceleration zones, gaining a little bit of time. Now the Supra will come back at us massively on the straights, so we need to try and break that slipstream just to reduce the advantage it's going to get. So through here we're going to push quite aggressive, try and get into the apex, try and get the car rotated and get on that power as early as we can. Now, I'm not driving this Z4 perfect. Like I say, this is one of our first races with it. It was early on in the week, and you know, I wasn't really fully up to speed with this car. So I do think it had a little bit more potential than what I'm giving it, but we're doing our best to try and get a result here as we get the gap up to 1.8 seconds. But you can see by the end of the straight, the gap's back down to 1.4 seconds, and we actually had the gap up to 2 seconds after the chicane. So that Supra gained nearly 6-7 tenths on us, even though we had a tyre advantage through the chicane. So that shows you the power advantage that Supra's got. But luckily, he's not in the slipstream. We've got 2 laps to go, and he still isn't in the slipstream, and that is really important for us. And you can actually see the gap there to ourselves, P2 and 3. It's just enough to keep him out of that slipstream. This is going really, really well so far on this Daily Race C, keeping it smooth, trying to make sure we don't make mistakes. Now, one thing we don't want to do is just pick up a penalty, so just trying to not take too many risks. We've got enough of a buffer there just to keep him out the slipstream, and we've got this section here where the Z4 is actually pretty strong. So the slower corners, Z4 is actually pretty decent. You can get good traction out of them and good acceleration, especially when we're on the tyre advantage. So you can see the gap there, 2.4 seconds. However, by the time we get to the end of the straight, 1.7. So again, nearly 7-8 tenths there gone instantly just because of the power zone, and he's on the obviously the harder tyre as well. Now we're on the last lap now, and we've got a 1.6 second lead. Can we hold on to this lead all the way to the finishing line? You can see him in the mirror. He's right there. He's 1.6, 1.7, 1.8. It's varying depending on the corners. Now his hard tyres are starting to get a little bit better now, so they're coming closer to the mediums. Now the mediums still have more grip, because the medium tyre on the new tyre model basically dies once it's completely red, so you still have reasonable grip until then, but they do lose a bit of pace as they get a little bit lower. So them hard tyres will be a little bit stronger up until a certain point, you know, they're compared to the medium. But you can see out of the exit we're still getting that good traction, and we've got that gap at 2.1 seconds onto this straight. Now that should be enough. You can gain a few tenths before the chicane. You can see now, keep your eye on that delta. It's 2.1 now. It's going to come down from this point onwards as we work our way into the chicane. It's now coming under the 2 second mark, but we'd have to get a penalty here for him to really be able to get close to us, and all we've got to do is get through this chicane with no penalty, and we're probably going to take a win in this Daily Race C with one of the most underpowered cars that you can use for this race. So onto the straight, over this delta there, you can see, and fast forward in the action, you can see he's gaining, but he's not going to be able to gain enough. He finishes 1.5 seconds behind us, and we take a win in the Z4 in Daily Race C. that was an enjoyable one. I hope you lot enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Hit that like button and let me know in the comments if any races you've done this week without using the Supra. I'd love to hear it. Thanks again for watching, everyone. I'll see you all soon. Bye.